Welcome everyone to today's deep dive. We're really glad you're here with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to get into this one.
So I want you to picture something for a second. Picture a classic suburban landscape. What's the very first image that pops into your head?
I mean, for me, even before the house itself, it's the perfectly manicured lawn and, of course, the white picket fence.
Right, exactly. The white picket fence, it's like this universal symbol of domestic tranquility.
It really is. It telegraphs to the world that everything inside this space is orderly. Everything in here is safe.
It's a very clean binary boundary, right? Like mine and yours.
Yeah, it basically organizes society at the most granular level.
But then, and this is where it gets interesting, imagine taking that exact same object, that pristine, super familiar white picket fence, and you just rip it completely out of the ground.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah, you strip away the grass, you remove the house, you take away the neighborhood, the entire context, and you suspend it entirely alone, floating within this luminous, infinite white void.
Just hang in there.
Just hanging there in midair, casting this really soft, quiet shadow beneath it. It's actually a real conceptual art piece, and it's inspired by the Taylor Swift song Fortnight.
Which is such a striking visual.
It really is. And when you look at this everyday suburban object just floating in a void like that, it suddenly doesn't look comforting at all. It actually looks, I don't know, a little eerie.
Well, yeah, because it shifts from being a physical barrier into a purely psychological one.
Right.
Without the yard to protect,
Yeah.
the fence just becomes a monument to the very idea of separation itself.
And that striking, slightly unsettling image, that is the anchor for our mission today. We are exploring a collection of textual notes written specifically to accompany this floating fence.
And we have some wildly different perspectives in these notes.
We really do. We have notes from a poet, an academic, an art curator, and even like a late-night barfly.
It's quite the mix.
It is. And by unpacking what these drastically different sources see in this one piece of Swift-inspired art, we're going to try and figure out why human nature is so fundamentally captivated by the things we cannot reach.
It's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
And the sources essentially act as different psychological lenses for it.
Right. So where do we start?
Well, the first text, titled Bridge, goes straight to the subconscious. It opens with this amazing line. The suburbs are home to the unconscious.
Okay, stop right there. I need to unpack that.
Go for it.
How can a geographical like a literal suburb, be the home of the unconscious mind? Because we usually associate suburbs with, strict conformity, not deep psychological undercurrents.
Right, but the text is heavily leaning into Freudian theory here.
Right.
It introduces this duality playing out in this neighborhood of the mind.
Okay.
On one side of the fence, you have what Freud called the superego. That's the moralizing, rule-following part of our psyche.
The part that cares what the neighbors think?
Exactly. The text says, the superego waters clean flowers. It's doing the expected, socially acceptable thing, keeping up appearances.
Right, maintaining the illusion of perfection. But I'm guessing the other side of the fence isn't just planting tulips.
Far from it. The text states, the id dreams of shears. And the id, in Freudian terms, is our primal, chaotic, desire-driven core.
Wait, I'm struggling with that imagery a bit. Dreams of shears, like gardening shears.
Yeah, exactly.
But why shears? If the primal part of us just wants what it wants, wouldn't it dream of like a sledgehammer to knock the fence down entirely?
That's a great distinction to make. See, a sledgehammer is pure destruction, but shears are precise.
Oh, I see.
They are meant for pruning, for cutting through the neat, manicured things the superego has planted. The id doesn't just want to destroy the boundary.
It wants to violently intrude on the neighbor's curated life.
Precisely. But, and this is the crucial part, it only dreams of doing it because the fence holds it back.
So is the fence essentially a physical manifestation of psychological repression?
Essentially, yes.
If I'm trying to visualize this, is it like a museum display case?
What do you mean?
Like, we build this pristine, orderly boundary specifically to keep our messy, primal desires from putting their greasy hands all over the artifacts we want.
It acts exactly like museum glass, yes. But the text argues that this repression doesn't actually kill the desire.
It doesn't.
No, it creates a relentless cycle. It says, love repeats without learning, and this is my favorite line, February plays on a private loop.
February plays on a private loop. I mean, as a piece of writing, that is a vivid, incredibly melancholic image.
It really is.
But why February? Why not December or August?
Well, think about the psychological weight of February. It's the shortest month, yet it often feels the longest.
Oh, totally. It drags on forever.
Right. It's the dead of winter in many places. It's bleak. It's this waiting period before spring. If you are stuck in a private loop of February, you are trapped in a state of cold, unresolved yearning.
You're waiting for a thaw that never comes.
Because the fence prevents the season from changing. The boundary forces you to stay exactly where you are.
Wow. So the text concludes that we actually want the barrier.
Basically, it says, desire prefers the dividing fence. The physical memory of a connection might linger, as the text puts it, touch survives the calendar.
Right.
But ultimately, the neighbor across the fence merely reawakens old symptoms.
Calling them symptoms makes it sound like a disease, like an illness that was never fully cured, just, pushed into remission by the boundary line.
And that's a dynamic we see all the time. Think about this. For you, listening right now, have you ever noticed how returning to a familiar environment, maybe going back to your hometown for a holiday, immediately triggers old emotional habits?
Oh, 100%. You walk into your old bedroom and suddenly you're an angsty teenager again.
Exactly. You cross back into that specific geography, you see an old flame or a specific neighbor, and suddenly you are experiencing those old symptoms. You revert to the person you were when that boundary was first drawn.
So the dividing fence didn't cure the obsession, it just preserved it in amber.
Precisely.
Okay, so the poet says fences create this endless freezing loop of desire. But is there actual data to back up the idea that humans prefer longing over having? Because it feels really counterintuitive.
It does feel backward, but it turns out academia has actually tried to measure this exact neurosis. Which brings us to the next source, the Ivy League note.
And I have to admit, when I first started reading the source, I was a little confused.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because it's a massive tonal shift. It references recent studies by the Adjacent Desire Persistence Framework, or ADPF, and I was thinking, is that a real sociological term?
And it sounds incredibly dense.
Right. But then the note adds a parenthetical that says, as everyone knows, acronyms are important. Without them, academic language would collapse into readability.
Which tells you immediately that this isn't a straightforward academic paper.
No, it's a sharp satire. It's making fun of how institutions try to sterilize messy, uncontrollable human emotions.
The joke is brilliant. But even if the framework itself is satirical, the data it presents actually hits incredibly hard.
It really does. They cite a double one-eyed survey of 10,000 remembered obsessions.
Double one-eyed. They are literally evoking the image of researchers, or maybe the subjects themselves, squinting through the narrow slats of a picket fence with one eye to gather this data.
I was picturing serious scientists with clipboards just peering through a fence, but the statistic they produce from this absurd survey is staggering.
What was the number again?
They claim that 76.8% of respondents spent more time imagining inaccessible relationships than participating in accessible ones.
It's a sobering thought, really.
Yeah.
I mean, more than 3/4 of people are investing significantly more mental and emotional energy into fantasies about what they cannot reach, rather than engaging with the reality of what is right in front of them in their own yard.
That is painfully relatable. But how do the scholars in the text actually explain the mechanics of that? Why would the brain prefer to waste energy on a fantasy?
This is where we get into what they term constructive relational distance, or CRD. And they argue that the floating picket fence perfectly illustrates visible separation dynamics, or VSD.
Okay, hold on. Visible separation dynamics. Break that down for me because it sounds like word salad. What is the actual mechanism there?
The core paradox of VSD is that transparency and access are not the same thing.
Okay.
To understand why visible separation sustains desire, we have to look at how our brains process anticipation.
Like dopamine?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We often think of dopamine as the reward chemical, but it's actually the seeking chemical. It spikes when you anticipate getting something you want.
Right, the thrill of the chase.
Yes, if you cross the fence and actually get the thing, the dopamine drops. The reward is attained, the chase is over.
So the excitement just kind of flatlines.
Right. But if you can see the object of your desire, but you are physically prevented from reaching it, your dopamine system stays in a chronic state of heightened anticipation.
Oh, wow.
The fence keeps the engine running endlessly.
So if I can't see the thing at all, I eventually forget about it, and the dopamine baseline resets.
Yes.
And if I get the thing, the spike ends. But the picket fence creates the exact, precise conditions to keep me hooked indefinitely.
That's visible separation dynamics in a nutshell. The text explicitly states the most effective barriers are often those that politely allow you to keep looking.
Politely allow you to keep looking. That's so good.
Observation itself becomes the very mechanism through which the distance and the desire is preserved.
You know, connecting that to the physical nature of the fence, that actually explains why a picket fence is fundamentally crueler than a solid brick wall.
Oh, that's an interesting point. How do you mean?
Well, think about it. A solid brick wall conceals everything. It physically and visually blocks you. It gives you closure.
Right, you can't see over it.
Exactly. You can't see over it. So eventually your brain gives up, you turn around and you walk away. But a picket fence, it conceals absolutely nothing. Every single element of the neighbor's yard is perfectly observable.
You can see all of it.
You can see the green grass. You can see the superego watering those clean flowers. It basically says, go ahead, take a look, but don't touch. It forces you to be a spectator in a life you aren't allowed to participate in.
It's an enforced voyeurism, which transitions us perfectly to the next perspectives in our sources.
Yeah, let's get into those.
If academia tries to sterilize this feeling with acronyms, the art curator and the barfly bring it right back down to a deeply physical, human reality.
Let's look at the curator's note first. When an art expert looks at this Taylor Swift-inspired floating fence, what are they seeing?
The curator focuses heavily on the physical space the fence creates. They view the structure as occupying a liminal zone, a tension between invitation and refusal.
Invitation and refusal.
Yeah. Visibility remains completely intact, but access is fiercely restricted. But the most insightful point the curator makes is about absence.
What do they say about it?
They note that the fence gives shape to absence rather than preventing it.
Give shape to absence. I'm trying to wrap my head around that. How do you give shape to something that isn't there?
Think of a mold used in casting bronze or plaster. The mold itself is just the boundary. It's the hollow space inside that holds the potential. The fence acts like a mold for our longing. It draws a stark outline around the empty space between two people so you can clearly see exactly how much is missing.
That is tragically beautiful. You don't realize how far away someone is until you draw a line between you and them.
Exactly.
But as poetic as the curator is, I think my favorite source in this entire collection is the barfly note.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It just cuts through all the Freudian theory and all the academic jargon in one single breath. It feels like you're sitting on a sticky bar stool at 2 a.m. and the guy next to you just drops a massive truth bomb over a glass of whiskey.
It's incredibly grounded. The barfly note opens with this observation. Funny thing about fences, nobody writes songs about walls.
It's such a simple sentence, but it explains so much. Nobody writes songs about walls because walls end the conversation. Right.
To use a linguistic analogy, if a wall is a period at the end of a sentence, a hard stop, the story is over.
A definitive end.
Yes. Then a fence is the word ellipsis.
How well?
Just those three little dots that keep the narrative trailing off into the unknown.
Yeah, it leaves the story entirely unresolved. And the barfly explains the exact mechanics of why people get trapped in that trailing off.
What do they say?
The text says you can see everything, you can imagine everything, you can invent entire futures while standing exactly where you are.
Wow.
And then they deliver the defining insight of the note. They say fences don't stop desire. They give desire a mailing address.
A mailing address for desire. That is incredible.
Isn't it?
It means your longing isn't just floating aimlessly out in the ether. It is directed highly specifically at that house, across that specific white picket boundary. You know exactly where to send the letters, even if you never mailed them. And that is why the barfly notes that people can spend decades in love with what is on the other side. Now, think about the physical reality of a picket fence. It's what, 3 or 4 feet tall?
Yeah, you could easily just hop over it. It's not a security perimeter.
Exactly. They aren't trapped because they physically cannot cross the boundary. They spend decades in love because they choose to never stop staring through the gaps.
They prefer it.
They do. Because the fantasy that you construct while looking through those slats is infinitely more appealing and infinitely safer than the potential disappointment of reality.
Because when you just stare through the gaps, you hold all the power. You get to write the script. You invent the future where everything goes perfectly.
Right.
If you actually jump the fence and knock on the door, you have to deal with the messy, unpredictable reality of another human being. You've had to deal with the fact that maybe the grass over there is actually full of weeds.
The fence protects the observer just as much as it protects the neighbor. It keeps you safe from the consequences of your own desires.
That brings up a really confronting question for you as you're listening to this.
It really does.
Consider the architecture of your own life right now. What fences do you maintain? Are there situations or maybe relationships where you actually prefer the safety of staring through the gaps?
It's a tough thing to ask yourself.
It is, where you are actively choosing the comfort of imagining a perfect future rather than taking the risk of crossing over into a messy reality.
It's uncomfortable to admit, but we all build them. And that is the cohesive thread tying all of these disparate sources together.
Synthesize it for us.
Well, whether we are looking at this artwork through the Freudian lens of the id dreaming of shears or the Ivy League scholars satirically measuring visible separation dynamics, or the barfly noting that desire needs a mailing address,
Right.
the fundamental human truth is the same. Boundaries are essential for sustaining our obsessions. We convince ourselves that we want total access to the things we desire, but total access often extinguishes the very longing that makes us feel alive.
So, what does this all mean? It means that our most durable, enduring desires are rarely fueled by what we actually possess. They are fueled by the structures that keep us just far enough away to keep our imaginations running.
The obstacle isn't blocking the love. The obstacle is generating it.
The fence is the engine of the fantasy. Without the restriction, the illusion collapses under the weight of reality.
Exactly.
Which brings me to one final, incredibly provocative thought. Something I've been wrestling with since we started looking at these sources, and something to leave you pondering long after this deep dive ends.
Let's hear it.
If human nature inherently prefers the dividing fence, as the bridge text argued, if we need these physical and psychological barriers to maintain the fantasy of desire, what happens to us in the modern digital age?
Oh, that is the ultimate question, isn't it?
Right now, technology and social media are effectively tearing down all the fences. We have constant, unrestricted, 24/7 access to the lives of the people we used to long for from afar.
Total access.
Total access. You don't have to stare through the physical slats of a wooden fence in the freezing cold of February anymore. You just open an app and you can see what they ate for breakfast, who they're hanging out with, what their living room looks like.
Yeah, it's all right there.
We have engineered a world of total visibility and absolute accessibility. But does total accessibility actually kill the romance of imagination? Have we built a society with no boundaries, only to realize we've accidentally cured ourselves of the ability to dream about each other?
That's haunting. When there are no gaps left to look through and no shadows left to hide in, there is no empty space left for the mind to invent a future. You're just left with the mundane reality of the present.
It really makes you look at that conceptual artwork entirely differently. That pristine white picket fence, inspired by Taylor Swift, suspended all alone in the luminous white void, casting its soft, quiet shadow.
It changes the whole meaning.
It does. When you first look at it, it seems like a symbol of restriction. But maybe in an age where everything is accessible all the time, maybe it's actually a monument to the lost art of longing.
Beautifully said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you a new lens to look through. Keep questioning the world around you, keep examining the boundaries you build in your own life, and we'll catch you next time.